Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Shirley Engelhard. I am the president of the Academy of Education, and I would like to welcome you all to the 27th Annual Pauline Cerasoli Lectureship, sponsored by the Academy. I love how a hush fell through the room. Thank you all so much for your attention. This lectureship's namesake is Dr. Pauline Cerasoli. She was an active member of the APTA for more than 40 years. She had a strong voice in the education section and a widely respected mentor and leader whose last professional position was serving as the Director of Physical Therapist Education and Assistant Dean of Allied Health at the University of Colorado. Polly's expertise, energy, and encouragement pushed all those around her to new heights. Polly was passionate about advancing the profession of physical therapy and was a risk taker. In advance of recent trends, Polly believed in teamwork, interdisciplinary education, and the development of leadership skills in health professionals. She was never afraid to move forward as an individual or as an advocate for the profession. Her leadership and humor made her a respected colleague throughout the physical therapy education communities, most especially among educators first in Boston and then at the University of Colorado. The Cerasoli Fund was originally established to assist Polly's family in providing for her care. After Polly's untimely death in 2010, Polly's family dedicated the fund money to initiate an ongoing lectureship in Polly's name. Thanks to this very kind and generous act and continued support by the APTA Academy of Education, we continue to enjoy the annual lectureship that was created in honor of the commitment and dedication of Polly Cerasoli. It is truly an honor to be able to celebrate her life while honoring key contemporary leaders in physical therapy education. The recipients of the lectureship are those who have distinguished themselves, as Polly did, as esteemed educators, administrators, practitioners, mentors, and as articulate, sensitive, and caring individuals. I would like to acknowledge our previous Cerasoli lecturers, many of whom are joining us today. I would like to invite any past Cerasoli lecturers in the audience to please stand and be recognized. Thank you. It's so exciting to see such amazing people joining us today. It is now my great pleasure to introduce APTA President Roger Herr to introduce the 2024 Cerasoli Lecturer, Dr. Emmanuel John.
This year's Cerasoli Award recipient, Dr. Emmanuel John, has been a force in physical therapy in the United States and internationally. Currently, Dean of the Dr. Donald E. and Lois J. Myers School of Nursing and Health Professions at York College of Pennsylvania, and a visiting professor at the Chrisland University, Nigeria, Dr. John started his career as a physiotherapist at the National Orthopedic Hospital in Kano, Nigeria, before moving to the United States in 2002. Dr. John is currently president of the International Association of Nigerian Physical Therapists for North America, and he served as secretary of the American Council of Academic Physical Therapy. Also executive director of the Nigeria Physiotherapy Network and president/CEO of the Nigeria Physiotherapy Network Foundation, Incorporated. His commitment to interdisciplinary cooperation is evident in his work as a board member of the Memorial Health Fund of the York County Foundation, which is as a board member of the UPMC York Memorial Hospital Advisory Board, and as the editorial board member for the Journals of the American Heart Association. He is also a Fellow of the American Heart Association and Fellow of the Institute of Management Consultants and Credentialed Fellowship Graduates of APTA's Education Leadership Institute. Within the profession, Dr. John has mentored many faculty from underrepresented minority groups to become leaders, served on APTA's Internationally Educated Physical Therapist Work Group to encourage internationally educated physical therapists who represent 12% of the profession to participate more actively in APTA, and he developed the American Council of Academic Physical Therapy's DEI Consortium. Please join me in welcoming to the podium the 2024 Cerasoli Lecturer, Dr. Emmanuel John.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is a great honor for me to be here this afternoon, and I want to thank each and every one of you for being here to listen to this year's lecture. I would like to start by giving some words of gratitude and acknowledgement. I am very grateful and thankful for many of my colleagues that nominated me and wrote letters of support for me to be awarded this year's lectureship. This includes Kimberly Venado, Zenobia Crawford, Kim Nixon Cave, Lisa Van Hoos, Jeanette Meadows, Maria Conceal Aguila. I want to say thank you to all of them. I also want to say thank you and acknowledge my mentors whose contribution has shaped me along the way, all the way from Nigeria to here in the United States. I would like to start with my primary mentor in Nigeria. His name is Dr. Isaac Owoye, a Nigerian educated physical therapist who came to the United States to Long Island University for his master's degree and New York University for his PhD degree. Out of 11 Nigerian physiotherapists that were sponsored by the University of Lagos to come to the US to study and to return to Nigeria to train us, he was the only one that returned. 10 people stayed behind. If he had not returned, our program in Nigeria that I graduated from would have collapsed. And this is just an example of when I was the president of the Nigerian Association of Physiotherapy Students, I represented Nigeria in Germany at the Conference of the International Physiotherapy Students Association, and he said I should give a report. And this is just pictures to show the support he gave me during that time. I also would like to acknowledge my mentors here since I arrived in the United States. My primary mentor here is Dr. Chukwuka Nwemeka. He found me, and he was the one that attracted me to the PhD program at the University of Kansas Medical Center. I also want to, and he remained my mentor till today. He's the immediate past provost of San Diego State University. I also want to acknowledge my mentor at the University of Kansas Medical Center, Dr. Lisa Steno-Beetle. She was the one that ensured that I came to the United States. After I was given admission to the University of Kansas, and I told Dr. Beetle, I won't be able to come without financial assistance. She was the one that went to the graduate school, and I became the first graduate teaching assistant in the Department of Physical Therapy with tuition waiver and an annual stipend. So I'm very grateful to Dr. Beetle. She was a founding program director of the PhD program at the time, and he came to the airport to pick myself and my wife, and she housed us in her house for 10 days before we could find and accommodation for our own. So I'm very grateful to Dr. Beetle. My inspiration, I also took from another Nigerian educated physical therapist, Dr. Joseph A. Balogun, who retired as a distinguished professor at Chicago State University. And he was a mentor and inspiration to many of us who are from Nigeria. I also would like to acknowledge colleagues, faculty, colleagues, staff, students at the various institutions that I have been affiliated with. College of Medicine, University of Lagos, Nigeria, University of Kansas Medical Center in Kansas City, Howard University, Washington, D.C. Great shout out to my mentor and friend, Dr. Stephen Chesebro. He hired me for my first faculty job, and he has remained my mentor and friend till this day. Radford University, Roanoke, Virginia, Touro University, Nevada, Chapman University in Orange, Irvine, California, and currently my colleagues at York College of Pennsylvania. I also want to thank my faculty colleagues. You contributed in shaping me to who I am today. From all the, I want to say thank you to faculty who taught me the various programs where I graduated from. Bachelor's degree in physical therapy from College of Medicine, University of Lagos, a PhD from the University of Kansas, Doctor of Physical Therapy from Alabama State University, Louisiana State University is the reason why I'm giving this talk today, the title, for my MBA, and Liberty University in Lynchburg for my MPH. I would also like to thank my family, my wife, Pastor Oluwatoyin John, and our 3 children for being great support. Without them, I will not be able to do all the things that I'm doing. Having gotten that out of the way, I would like to touch briefly on the legacy of Dr. Pauline Cerasoli, for whom this lectureship was named. Many of us younger generation physical therapists, we may not have had the opportunity to know her in our lifetime, but we are happy to learn about her legacy from those who knew her. For instance, I was reading the treatise that was written about Polly by Dr. Ann Harris, published in the DPT in 2011. And one thing that stood out to me was this quote that says that Polly was passionate about advancing the profession of physical therapy and was a risk taker. Polly believed in teamwork, interdisciplinary education, and the development of leadership skills in health professions. She was never afraid to move forward as an individual, as an advocate for the profession. If I should take out the words that stood out to me in that quote, advancing the profession. A risk taker, that tells me she challenges the status quo. She's never afraid to move forward. And she was a passionate advocate for the profession. I'm hoping that these remarkable qualities that she has will be demonstrated in the lecture that I will be giving today to advance the profession, challenge the status quo, courageously speak truth to power, to move us forward and advocate for the profession. And that brings me to the title of my presentation, Weak, Though Accredited. And we'll be looking at the potential application of operations research to optimize human capital and physical resources for strengthening entry-level physical therapist education programs. And we'll briefly talk about its implication for criteria for excellence and accreditation standards. Let me say from the onset, the concept of weak, though accredited, for entry-level education programs, I posit that many programs are being continually accredited and remain in compliance with CAPTIS standards, even though they may be operating with below marginal fiscal and human capital resources. but they are still accredited. Why? We have no minimums. What do I mean by we have no minimums? Our accreditation standard appears very strong on curriculum, on policies for programs, on students' assessments, and many other aspects of physical therapy education. We can continue to improve this. The focus of this lecture, though, is taking us up on the lack of guidance for minimums for fiscal and human capital resources for entry-level education, physical therapy education programs. Because resources can be directly correlated to the ability for physical therapy education programs to become excellent physical therapy programs. I hope that I will be able to speak truth to power today, and that it will not evoke defensive emotions, but rather that we get inspired, challenged, and for us to be able to see different perspectives so that we can deal with this particular wicked problem in our education system so that we can move our profession forward. Here we go. Let me start by saying that the United States higher education industry is going through tough times. There's rising cost of higher education, enrollment issues, demographic cliff, budget deficits, the COVID-19 that we're still trying to dig ourselves out of deficits, many institutions. There is challenge with relevancy and lucrativeness of some degree programs. I'm not talking about PT programs. There is also an attack on higher education. And we're being challenged to prove that the return on investment of the high cost of education is worth it for the public. And there's increased burden of debt on our students and graduates. In all of these, our entry-level programs in physical therapy, as well as the PTA programs, are feeling the squeeze. And I put it to us that many a times at many institutions, our physical therapy education programs are disproportionately affected because we don't have minimums. Let's take just one example of this item in the Forbes magazine that reported that, 3 major universities, they reveal plans for budget cuts. And what are those universities? Penn State. The president of Penn State in 2023, about this time last year, sent an email, a memo to the university community. And what did they say? They have $140 million deficit. And the Board of Trustees has given her until 2025 July to balance budget. What does that mean? Severe cuts. Another institution, University of Connecticut, they reported they have $70 million deficit for the fiscal year 25. And in addition to the $29 million hole in the Yukon health system. As a result, administrators are laying off, closing programs. Look at all the cuts that they plan through the year 2029. University of New Hampshire also had challenges. They have $14 million they need to cut from their budget. And they are laying off faculty and staff. So that means that academic programs and institutions are hard pressed on all sides, and administrators must make very difficult decisions to ensure the good physical health of the institution. Administrators are looking for the path of least resistance when they are cutting budgets. Those who are in academia, faculty, it's just like the other time that politicians are talking about cutting Medicare. And many older citizens say, don't touch my Medicare. We can do the same thing in academia. Don't touch my salary. Don't follow me. Don't cut my line. We can do that. So administrators will like to look for the pathway of least resistance. How do they do that? They look at non-viable programs that they can cut. And they look at programs, departments, schools, colleges within the institutions that they can squeeze out of the budget, because if the president has been given the mandate by the board of trustees, balance your budget by 25. If she doesn't, she loses her job. So she will cut. Therefore, it sets off competition for limited resources within the academic institution. So, in the light of all these challenges, our profession of physical therapy appears to shy away from its responsibility of fully protecting entry-level education programs. I say that for physical therapy and also for physical therapy assistants. By an act of commission or omission, it appears to me that our profession has refused to significantly insulate our entry-level education programs to minimize potential damage and weakening due to the general ongoing events and fiscal challenges within higher education. Rather, what did we do? We punted our responsibility to the academic institutions by not having any minimums in our standards. And we expect the academic institutions to act in good faith. Now, here's a different perspective to accreditation standards. This is the way I view it. It is our profession's contract and partnership agreements with academic institutions to implement our collective vision for entry-level physical therapists and PTA education. Our accreditation standard is a contract. We tell academic institutions we want you to graduate physical therapists with doctorate degrees, and this is the contract. And we appointed program directors as our profession's representative within the institution, and we expect the program directors to be the enforcers of the terms of this contract. They are supposed to be looking out for our profession, ensure that our profession gets a good deal, a fair deal, and potentially report back to the profession through CAPT if there is non-compliance. However, I put it to all of us that the current contract we have with academic institutions appear to me to be a terrible one. I consider it to be a bad deal for our profession from the perspective of fiscal and human resources due to the following reasons. One, at several academic institutions, it considerably weakens the position and ability of our profession's representative, that means program directors, to be able to negotiate and get optimal resources for their program's mission and vision. Our current contract with institutions, which is our accreditation standard, subjugates the profession's representative, the program director, to the whims and caprices of some administrators with poor leadership skills, or there are some institutions with very unfair processes for fiscal and human resources allocation. Of course, we have punted our responsibilities to the academic institution, expecting them to act in good faith. I can assure you, I am now an academic administrator. We will act in good faith, except that our priority is different from that of the profession. First, we will want to save our institution, because if the institution goes down, then no program will survive. Second, we would like to prop up other programs within our institutions that are not profitable but we consider important. And lastly, we will, in good faith, allow the physical therapy entry-level education program to operate based on the minimum resources we can give them because our current contract allows them to do that. And academic institutions can demonstrate through beautifully crafted narratives in self-study documents and in our R. Sometimes we do that by putting a gun to the head of a program director. Your job, or you push this to CAPTI to show us that we are good. Let me say this. Academic institutions love our contract. They love our accreditation standards. They love our accrediting body because these are the words of a provost to me. CAPTI is commended for being highly collegial and helpful. I believe this is a great testimonial to CAPTI commissioners and CAPTI staff. Thank you so much. CAPTI pays attention to details, especially in the standards 1, 2, and the 7Ds. They give us tremendous latitude on human and physical resources. They say, do it the way, be innovative. Even if that innovation is giving the barest minimum resources to the PT program that is generating a lot of tuition revenue. This is not surprising, though, because it is in our core as physical therapists. We want to help people. We want to help our patients. And we are characteristically doing very more. We are being asked to do more with very little. I used to think it's a Nigerian problem when I was practicing in Nigeria as a physiotherapist. And I came to the United States, I discovered, oh, it's in the DNA of physical therapy. So when we look at the current higher education environment, I want to say that our profession is acting irresponsibly. We are leaving our entry-level education programs weaker than they ought to be because our contract, our accreditation standard is ladled with loopholes that allow institutions to get away with giving minimal resources to the programs. As a proverbial goose laying golden eggs, tuition revenue, many of our entry-level programs are being cheated or robbed of equitable human capital and physical resources that are needed for them to perform excellently. I'm remembering right now, I believe it was 2017, that Dr. Chad Cook of Duke University, who was a Cerasoli lecturer for that year, talked to us about the fallacy of the sunken cost. And he was able to tell us that our current standard of determining excellence in physical therapy programs, which is graduation rate, attrition rate, employment rate, is really not a mark of excellence. Why? Because we are getting graduate students who came to PT school because they have a goal. So that he made a statement that stuck with me. He said, we can be a crappy teaching program, but the student will still pass their board exam. Because if they don't pass their board exam, all their student loan money goes to waste. I'm remembering right now, at one of the institutions where I worked, one of my faculty colleagues was so mad at their alma mater because they discovered that they had to spend about 4 to 6 months to study items that were not taught in their school as a student, because they went to a NPT workshop and they discovered there was so much hole in their knowledge, whereas that program is fully accredited. And it can be tied to low resources, many faculty lines that are open, not because we can find people, but because there are no faculty lines. I must acknowledge there are some institutions with very good processes in place to fairly give resources, allocate resources to their programs regardless of whether they are physical therapy or not. Kudos to those institutions. But I posit to us that they are in the minority. We have over 270 programs. Those programs that have fair processes are very few. Many programs appears to be operating at BRS minimum, but remarkably, they are meeting accreditation standards. Why? Again, because we have no minimum in terms of what programs need physically, fiscal, as well as human resources that they need to operate by. Somebody will say, Emmanuel, these are very strong assertions you're making, that programs are having minimal resources. Yeah. And they can say, show us the evidence. And I would say that's a problem. Because there's lack of evidence. Why? Because program directors that are our representative that are supposed to be reporting non-compliance issues, they have signed a sort of non-disclosure agreements when they took the employment. The institutional data belongs to the institution. I spoke with a lawyer, and the lawyer said, whistleblower, there's no whistleblower protection for program directors, especially when you work in a private institution. So if you think that your institution is out of compliance with CAPT in terms of fiscal resources, and they are blowing whistle on the institution, the problem will be that the program director can get fired. And institutional lawyers can come after that program director to say that you broke your agreement with us. Sometimes, even when the program director tries to sneak something into the HAR, it is missed. Or even if CAPT takes on the program, the institution will respond back with beautifully crafted narrative that meets the accreditation standard so that nothing gets done. Why? No minimum. We need to understand that the program director role is a privilege, not a right. You can be fired. In fact, it is the most unstable job in the physical therapy program. And they can be replaced very quickly. Unlike other disciplines that have placed safeguards to keep the sanctity of the entry-level programs, the physical therapy profession has ceded this responsibility to academic institutions. Our behavior as a profession can be likened to a Yoruba Nigerian proverb, which I paraphrase here. The saying of the elder says, hiring the hawk or the eagle as an attendant of the poultry flock will always be disastrous for the chicken. I will not play this video because of time. Because a little bit violent as well. Now, but let me give you an orientation to this picture here. That's the eagle or the hawk. That mother hen is the program director. The chicks are the faculty, the students, the resources within the program. Our profession is we are wanting our program directors to go against the ego, to go against the hawk, trying to protect the chicks. That's very unfair. As a profession, have we made our entry-level education programs easy prey for pilfering of their resources by hiring academic institutions as a budget-cutting hawks? We are hiring them as the attendant of our poultry flock, which is our education programs. To be clear, because I belong to this group, academic institution leaders absolutely respect boundaries set by accreditation when it exists. Otherwise, we use our discretion. I can give you an example. There is an instruction to my provost to reduce costs, to cut cost of instruction. And one of the ways she was looking at is we have many directors over little things all over the institution, and it comes with stipend and cost releases. An institution converts cost releases to money, and she's trying to cut some director positions. Then a program came to us and gave us accreditation requirements that different tracks need directors. They said, Emmanuel, but the provost is cutting director position. I said, this is a no-brainer. If we want this program, we must appoint the directors. That is what our own accreditation standard is not doing. Academic institution leaders respect boundaries that are set by accreditation. What are the excuses that we're given as a profession for shirking our responsibility? Oh, if we prescribe minimum standards for resources, this will kill small entry-level programs. On the other extreme of that, if we prescribe minimum standards, this will allow institutions to take away what is excess over and beyond the minimum standards. Captain will say, there is no evidence that we can use to require minimums. So therefore, we keep the status quo. Another excuse is we want programs to innovate, because by imposing minimums, we box them, we are not allowing them to innovate. These are the excuses. Let's look at some perspective for these excuses. To me, it is unlikely that small programs will die if we require some minimums. Why? Because our survival instincts as faculty will kick in, we will innovate and we will not die if we're a small program. The problem with that excuse is that many other entry-level programs that are not so small are being sacrificed on the altar of small programs. And I can say this, maybe we should allow small programs to die. Let me clarify before you stone me, I can hide behind this. I do not mean that small programs should go out of extinction. I'm saying we should kill small programs by they reinventing themselves and start becoming small. Why? Because I learned in business school that small class size does not make business sense. I remember I was engaged in a discussion with a program director who was a smaller program than mine when I was a program director, and she was advocating and strongly saying that big size program is not good for the curriculum. Then after we finished that discussion, then she said to me, by the way, I'm teaching 80% of my time. For the last 2 years, I've been asking my provost to give me 1 more line, 2 more lines, and the provost said, absolutely not. Here is how that operates. Every institution determines the profit margin they want from every program they invest in. So if the institution determines that 60% or 40% of your gross income is what they want to go into the common fund, once you have reached the limit they set for you, it doesn't matter your need, they will not give you another line, even if you need it, unless you can show them written black and white in the accreditation document, then it will happen. Small class size does not make sense unless if there's an endowment subsidizing or the taxpayer for a public institution subsidizing. We have exposed many program directors at many programs to combating cuts in their resources without protection from our current accreditation standards. So what about the excuse by not so small institutions that are afraid that if CAPTI should set minimums, they will lose their resources? They can say, listen, we have fought so hard for decades to get what we have at our institution. If CAPTI should set minimum standards, it gives the institution the authority to come and take some of our resources that goes beyond the minimum prescribed. And I can say, yes, I hear you. That is a very valid argument. It's potentially possible to lose your resources if CAPTI should set minimum standards. Take, for instance, if CAPTI come up to say, okay, Emmanuel, we hear you, we're going to set minimum standards. For every DPT program, you only need 10 FTE faculty, assuming, as an example. But a not so small program already have 15. What if the institution come back and say, yeah, your accreditor said you need 10? We can take the remaining 5 lines. So that fear is real, and I hear you. So because of all these excuses that are all very valid, I must say, what's the solution? Otherwise, we'll continue in this status quo. I want to propose to us that we have variety, variation, diversity, and different types of academic institutions where academic entry-level programs are housed. We should use a methodology known as operations research, which is used in business and engineering. I believe this can help us out. It will meet everybody's need, whether you're a small program, whether you're a medium-sized program, whether you're a big program, whether you're a teaching institution, whether you're a research institution. We might be able to help by not giving prescription, but by giving guidelines. So let's get into it. What is operations research? Operations research is an analytical method by which you can solve problems and take decisions to manage organizations. And it cuts across many fields. It's multidisciplinary, and it helps decision makers. Today, you may hear that Google is employing 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 people, workers. 3 months down the line, you may hear them that they are firing 50, 70,000 people. Amazon does the same. But if you are on Amazon Prime, you are still getting what you order at the time it normally comes. Nothing happens to it. They are using operations research and supply chain management to manage human resources and to save costs. The military is using it. Artificial intelligence is using it. We went to the moon. We sent rocket to the moon. We sent something to the Mars. I don't think the problem we have in the profession is as complicated as sending a rocket to Mars. I don't think so. In operations research, the problem is broken into basic components, about 5 steps needs to go through, identify what the problems are, construct a model around the problem that closely resemble the real-world situation, use models to derive solutions of a problem, test each solution by analyzing it for success, then implement it in real life to the actual problem. Those are the 5 steps. Now let me do a little digression into history. I want to say that the first physical therapy education program in the United States was actually started about 1910 at Children's Hospital in Los Angeles during the poliomyelitis epidemic. This particular part of our history is always missing when I hear us in the profession tell this story about how physical therapy started in the United States. The founders of that program at Children's Hospital, what they did was to take bachelor holders of physical education or health education or exercise science, and they gave them training on how to rehabilitate children who had polio. And they called them rehabilitation aides. That was different from where our story began that we normally tell in APTA about reconstruction aids after World War. This is a missing part of our story that I want to highlight. This program at Children's Hospital was formally inaugurated in 1921 when other programs are starting up in the country, and was accredited in 1928 when APTA started accrediting programs. So from inception, that program that was located at the Children's Hospital in Los Angeles started as a post-baccalaureate program, just like we have today. And it continues to inception to date. That program affiliated with Chapman University, where I used to be program director, in 1985. That was when we went to the MPT entry level. And regional accreditation is required, and hospitals don't have it. Then in 1993, Chapman University took over that program. So that's the reason why those of you who remember when I was program director, I always introduced myself. This is Emmanuel John from the oldest physical therapy education program in the country. And I remember that Northwestern University in Chicago will always challenge me. We are the oldest. So if you look at it that way, entry-level education program in the United States is over 100 years old. In the last century, we moved from diploma, post-baccalaureate diploma, to bachelor's, to master's, and to doctorate with Vision 2020. And we never changed the way we do things from the days of bachelor entry level. So when you look at this wicked problem we are talking about, you see that it's very complex and we need a solution that works for everybody. It used to bug me. When I go around the United States to many programs and I see that they usually have about 8 full-time faculty, I began to ask why. Whether you have 20 students or 30 students or 40 students, it's about 8, averagely. Then somebody told me that in the 80s or thereabouts, when we were still at the bachelor entry level, that somebody did a market research and determined that 8 full-time faculty is what is needed to graduate physical therapists from bachelor level programs. But after that, if that were true, I don't know, I've not seen any publication. If that were true, then we move from bachelor's to master's, from master's to doctorate. Nobody did any research to determine the minimum number of faculty we need for our entry-level programs. This bugged me a lot. Then when I was doing my MBA at Shreveport, Louisiana State University, I was in a class known as quantitative analysis, which I failed. The first time I took it and I was kicked out of the MBA program, I had to appeal and they reinstated me and I scored an A in it. In quantitative analysis, they give us a scenario whereby you are a manufacturer of chairs and tables. The size of your factory, assuming, is the size of this conference room, and you have machineries that are fixed. The size of the factory is fixed, the size of your equipment is fixed, but you are producing tables and chairs. The best you could do to maximize profit is to run your factory 24 hours, but that is also fixed. So the question that we answer in quantitative analysis is, what combination of tables and chairs should we make with the workforce we have, with the limited size of the room and limited instrumentation we have, that will give us the most profit? It could be shown that if you produce 200 tables and 600 chairs, you have the most profit. Or if you produce only 50 tables but 1,000 chairs, you get the most profit. So the owner of the factory will choose the one that gives the most profit. That was when my head started spinning. We can apply this to physical therapy. So when I was told that I will be the Cerasoli lecturer, I said, got you. I will present this. So I looked for my colleagues when I got to York College of Pennsylvania in November of 22, and I found Aslam Paleshi and Mohamed Raja from our Graham School of Business, and I said, listen, this is what I learned in quantitative analysis. We need to do some optimization to solve this problem. And we got to work. So to the best of our knowledge, there is no other educational or discipline that has used operations research to optimize how to determine the optimal resources that you need. So in operations research, you look at what we call decision variable that tells you, that gives you how to, that allows you to make decisions. You have input data that you input, and you have objective functions and constraints. And so let me quickly go through what's a decision variable. It's what you need that entry-level programs focuses on and what they want. If you ask faculty, they will tell you they need more resources. So that goes into the decision variable. We want this need met. For example, how many FTEs do we need? How many physical resources do we need? What composition of faculty, associate professor, full professor, assistant professor do we need? Based on our mission, whether we're a teaching institution or a research institution. So decision variables can be said to be resource focused. On the other hand, the input determines the parameter and defines the characteristics of your program. The curriculum. Are you a 120 credit program? Are you a 99 credit program like we have in Texas? Are you a 114? What percentage of lecture and lab, what teaching versus scholarship do you want faculty loads to be? All those things goes into the input. And the objective function, this is where the academic administrators are interested. How much will it cost to run the program that you are telling us you need to run? And then the constraints are what the contract that CAPTI will tell us, you must have this. You must have 50% PhD versus non-PhD faculty. We put all those constraints. Just like the example I gave, the manufacturer of table and chairs, as the size of the factory is just the size of this room. The chairs, if we're supposed the chairs are the assembly line, it is fixed. So those are constrains you to what you need to do, okay? So when we put all those together, in lay terms, operations research will be able to address all the challenges that I discussed since I started talking. all the excuses that we have why we couldn't prescribe minimum resources, we can answer those questions through operations research. Students can get the best out of the high tuition they are paying. Program directors and faculty will be very happy because they are getting the resources. Academic administrators are okay because even though academic leaders are cutting budgets, they still want your program to be excellent. If you have lousy report, they're going to fire the program director. They're going to replace. So that means if you use operations research, we can optimize. Another word in lay terms is minimize the cost, and we are more efficient. So we'll be able to address everybody's concern. So let me give you an example of the input variables. Take, for instance, you have the faculty type, the faculty rank, the type of degree that the faculty has, the combination of faculty. And then we can program everything that we have, all the constraints that we have, all the characteristics of our program, whether you're a small program, you're a big program, we can program it. We can program the percentage of teaching responsibility, whether you are research track, tenure track, non-tenure track. We can look at overhead. What is the cost of administration? Take, for instance, I'm trying to start a PA program. And PA accreditation says your program director for your physician assistant studies must be assigned 80% time to administer the program. And I'm thinking to myself, there was a dean who wanted to increase the teaching load of a program director. There was a program director that told me she was teaching at 80% of her time. Where would she have the time to even innovate, lead, or manage a program? That's why many people are quitting the program directorship. So what we can do, if CAPT should say that every program director must have 80% time released to do administration, that is where institutions can innovate. If CAPT will give them the opportunity to say, okay, the program director should have 80% release time for administration. But this is a research institution, and the program director should have, the institution wants the program director to have 40% for research. As long as the institution can show that they have offloaded part of that 80% to another person, another faculty, to join the program director, as maybe as an associate program director, to carry the burden of administration, they should be able to meet that standard. But by not setting standards, it's not good for our profession. So when we put all these things together, the budget, the everything, we come up with some equations. At the back end, some mathematical equations. And at the end of the day, with all this equation, we are taking care of everybody's needs, and this is the output that we use to make our decision. So for instance, I have 2 case studies here. Supposing you're a teaching institution, and these are the input data. You have 120 credits in your program. 20 of those credits is for clinical education. 60 of the credit is for lectures, didactics, and 40 is for labs. We encoded it. Faculty are hired to teach 24 credits a year. And we have a ratio 1:12 in the lab and a class size of 48. We just use this dummy data to show how operations research can be able to help us. And we put all the constraints. Faculty are teaching 70% of their time. They are doing other things. And at the end of the day, look at the result decision variable. That will mean that we need, in this kind of program, probably you will need 12 faculty and 6 adjuncts to fulfill your mission. And it will cost your institution almost $1.5 million. But they will make more from the tuition revenue. That's an example. What if your institution does a little bit of research? Assuming we keep all the other input data the same, but we just change the teaching parameters of the faculty, we will have that institution that does research will probably need 23 full-time faculty. And you can still have your 6 adjunct faculty. But your budget goes up, and that will be about $4.5 million. So by using operations research, it doesn't matter whether you're a small program, a medium-sized program, a big program. We can be able to use operations research to find the optimal resources that you need so that your program can work and be excellently. Remember, we said that in the, you can see it's very small. The results are subject to changes in the institutional input and parameter. We can actually make you unique and spill out some information that can be used by your institution. So we might be able to fix this wicked problem we are talking about, and we can deal permanently with the issue of under-resources that many programs are dealing with. Like I said earlier, many academic disciplines, apart from physical therapy, are jealously guarding the entry-level programs. Take, for instance, the Liaison Committee on Medical Education that accredits schools of medicine set boundaries to protect their MD programs. I just got to know recently that if you want to start a school of medicine, LCME puts a cap. You cannot give a financial plan that use more than 50% tuition as part of your operation. They want you to find other means to generate funds apart from tuition to run the MD program. That's why you will always hear that MD programs are always money losing, because the cost of medical training is very, very, very costly. And those programs that are housed in School of Medicine, that's the reason why your dean of the School of Medicine are very aggressive, taking your revenue and giving you little back because they have their mandate set. ACPA protects physician assistant studies, set boundaries. During COVID, there was across the board budget cuts. It's COVID. But those accrediting bodies, they gave time when you need to ramp up back to pre-COVID. There was nothing like that in our profession. Some programs permanently lost lines. Some programs permanently lost resources that are not yet back. And they may never get it back. Nothing compels the academic institution to give it back. The Pharmacy Council for Education also set boundaries for their PharmD. Why not us? This is what I got from the WAMC website. And if you look at tuition costs as part of, because they have to give account, how are they funding the School of Medicine? And you will see that tuition alone accounts for 0.6% of operational costs of schools of medicine. They cover all the other costs from the hospital, faculty, physician plan, practice, and all those things. Yes, we are not medicine. We don't have the luxury of other sources of revenue and income that they have, but our programs in physical therapy is very lucrative. Dr. Stanley Paris showed us many decades ago that physical therapy as a standalone program can be profitable. And today, the University of St. Augustine, as an example, is a multi-tens of millions of dollars entity. What are we afraid of in physical therapy that we don't want to set minimums? I hope we are not suffering from PTSD. Apologies to our veterans. From the 90s, when we were having problem with the therapy cap, that many programs closed, I understand many people left the profession, and we are very, very, very careful not to demand too many things from institutions so that academic programs won't close. Stanley Paris proved us wrong. If physical therapy were to stand alone as an institution, as the only program there, they can make it. But we're always better together in the health professions. You see, as a profession, we are focusing right now on student burnout. We are focusing on clinician burnout. Program directors can tell you that faculty are burning out, and we're not paying attention. During COVID, we are all concerned about the mental health of our students. Nobody was thinking about mental health of faculty. It's the program director that knows the health and the challenges of the faculty. And many program directors cannot sleep at night because these are challenges that they are dealing with. Why are we allowing our program directors to be engaged in a David and Goliath fight? We are pitching our academic program directors, who are usually at the bottom of that academic administration ladder. We are pitching them against powerful leaders at institutions, department chairs, when it's a program, deans and provosts. And we want our program directors to go against these powerful figures at academic institutions to wrestle resources from them. You see, as a profession, we have developed so many CPGs, clinical practice guidelines, for every condition under the sun. Why can't we have educational, entry-level educational resources guidelines? What's the big deal in that? Educational resources guideline for small programs. Educational resources guideline for research-intensive programs. Educational resources guideline for medium-sized teaching institutions. Why can't we have, what will I call that? EEFHRG. We can have guidelines based on your Carnegie classification, whether you're a teaching or research institution, your instructional mode, whether you're an in-person institution program or you are hybrid. Now that we're going into competency-based education, many faculty and program directors, they are scared. Because if they are fighting for resources before competency-based education, without all these things I'm talking about, it will be even more difficult in competency-based education. I am for competency-based education, but we better fix this first. As I'm rounding up, I want to dedicate this year's Cerasoli Award to our unsung heroes, the program director. No matter your title, whether you are called a program director, whether you are called a division director, whether you are called a chair, whether you are called an associate dean, whether you are called a dean, this Cerasoli Lecture Award is for you. Thank you for standing up and for fighting for our education programs. In case you have been injured while fighting for your program, in case you have been injured physically, in case your mental health has been affected, In case your professional academic leadership careers have been aborted because you went against a powerful dean, I apologize to you on behalf of our profession. I said, we are sorry. We did not do that intentionally. We are sorry for sending you to a battle that we did not outfit you with the right equipment. You see, as I interact with many program directors across the nation, many of our colleagues, they've retired prematurely because they just couldn't take it any longer. They just couldn't sit there and see the resources they are bringing in from their program being plundered, and they are given peanuts in return. Some resigned, some changed institutions. I also want to acknowledge program directors at institutions that you have fought for decades and you have gotten resources, even though you would prefer to have more, but you are better than most. I want to salute you. I want to say thank you for fighting hard. I want to remember successive generation of leaders, especially in Holder program, that have fought the hard fight of getting resources and being respected in the institution. I say thank you. I want to apologize on behalf of the profession within set boundaries around those resources so that you don't lose them. I also want to acknowledge and say thank you to program directors of small programs. Yes, you may not have the bargaining power to get resources, but you are standing in there. You are doing so much with so little. We say thank you. Hopefully, if our profession rises up based on this lecture, we can begin to protect you. I will be remiss if I end this lecture by not talking about captive consultants. Thank you for helping our programs, program director and faculty in self-study, writing, and responding to ARs, helping faculty as they develop programs. However, I want you to be aware that sometimes academic administrators use you against the programs and against the program directors. A dean may call you to say, I will offer you $500 if you will give me audience for 1 hour. And they will carve out a story without giving you the context. But you are an expert in CAPT standards. We have the saying of our elders back home that burglars don't know where the gold and the diamonds in your household are kept unless a member of the household show them the way. With due respect to our consultants, our colleagues, please don't be like that that member of the household that shows how to have a successful heist. Because sometimes program directors and faculty, knowing their institution, they look at the CAPT standard and they stretch it a little bit in order to get more resources. And especially a non-clinician administrator is saying, I don't see anything in your standard that tells me I have to give you $2,000 per faculty for travel, faculty development. And calls you up as a consultant and say, yes, you don't have to give them $2,000. In fact, when I was a faculty, we are lucky if I get $800. You just killed that program that was trying to get resources. Please be mindful of not being used against our entry-level programs. Maybe it's time for our colleagues, especially our colleagues who are retired, maybe we need to organize CAPT consultants into an organization and to set up best practices and come up with ways to help programs rather than cause more harm to programs. I want to say thank you to CAPTI staff, our commissioners, and our reviewers. Please, do not think that this lecture is to critique you. It's not you. You are the best. You are the best. I'm not privy to the financial model that CAPTI uses, but looking from outside in, I'm suspecting that CAPTI is not well funded because the staff are working very hard. I just applied to start a PA program. Do you know the cost of the application? $30,000. I don't know how much CAPTI charges. It seems as if in physical therapy we are very good at pro bono and being very cheap. Maybe it's time for us to review CAPTI's financial model. Why should a program that has 100 students and 20 faculty pay the same accreditation fee with a program that has 20 students and 4 or 5 faculty? Because when the CAPTI reviewers go to those programs, we work harder. But CAPTI give us the same stipend. That's unfair, that's not equitable. Those bigger programs, they will happily pay more if you charge per head. If you have a class size of 0 to 20, this is your annual accreditation fee. 20 to 30, this is your accreditation fee. Then accreditation fee can be equitable. So CAPTI staff and commissioners, please, this critique is not a condemnation of what you do. CAPTI ultimately does what the profession pushes for. CAPTI did not start Vision 2020 that took us to DPT, it was a profession. So it's not you, CAPTI. Why? I am CAPTI. I'm a reviewer for CAPTI. You all are CAPTI. We are all CAPTI. Please, can we give a round of applause to CAPTI commissioners and reviewers? So thank you so much, CAPTI. Summary and take-home message. Entry-level program leaders at several institutions are struggling to keep their resources. The higher education industry is challenged. There's currently no minimal protection from our accreditation standards. Our program directors are working in a very hostile environment in several institutions. Many programs cannot achieve the level of excellence they would love to achieve because of lack of resources. Faculty are burning out, and there's high turnover rates. Thank goodness for hybrid programs. But in-person programs are losing faculty. And I hope I've been able to convince us today that operations research, if applied, can potentially give our profession the opportunity to finally strengthen our entry-level programs. And I want to thank you all for your attention. And I look forward to us starting this national conversation. Our profession needs to do something about this. We can't continue this way. We can't continue to sacrifice our program directors. We can't continue to abort the long-term goals that some people have when you are fired from your position. Your ability to get a higher position in academic administration goes down. Some of our colleagues are very political savvy, but some cannot stand, I don't want to say shit, I hope that's not a curse word. So thank you for your attention. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you, Dr. John, for that very, very thought-provoking lectureship. As a program director, I thank you. I would like to invite the audience now for any questions that you may have. Please feel free to approach the mic in the center aisle, and we will ask Dr. John to respond.
Oh, never mind. She's going to go.
Oh, it's being recorded. Do you mind? Thank you. And we have someone at the mic while she's getting there. Would you like to go ahead?
Sure. Hi, I'm Kendra Gagnon from the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine and former PhD student with Dr. John. So it's nice to see you. Wonderful lecture. Thank you. So I've got some notes. I've been to many Cerasoli lectures. I've never stood up to the mic, so I'm a little nervous, I'll be honest, but hopefully I can kind of put this thought together. So your talk got me thinking about a lot of things, and I recently read the book, The Abundant University by Michael Smith, and I don't know if anybody else in this room has read the book, but it's, I thought, really thought-provoking. And in the book, he uses that factory analogy. So that was as soon as you started that, I started thinking about that book and the idea that, you know, our students are kind of the raw materials, our instruction is processing, and the finished product is the credential. And that our university systems have really operated and kind of been, you know, in their power in perpetuating some scarcities of those things: scarcity of students, scarcity of instruction, scarcity of credentials. In our time where we have this, you know, digital transformation, there seems to be an opportunity for us to leverage digital technologies so that we don't have to have a scarcity of instruction, because we can scale. We can teach from anywhere, anytime. We can reach more students, and we can build more flexible credentials. But yet it seems like we sort of continue to operate in this scarcity mindset, protecting the status quo, and I just sometimes wonder, who does that really serve? So I think I just wanted to share that because it seemed to align so much with what you were saying, but I'm also curious about your thoughts, and I'm wondering what you think about your operations research model and the idea of minimums. Is that scarcity mindset, or does that make room for us to have a more abundance mindset and think about how we can truly transform the way we do business in higher education to meet our mission?
Thank you so much for that question. The word we use is not minimal, even though in a sense it is, but it's called optimization. Even before I learned more details about operations research, I remember I was at a leadership training with ASAF, and they gave us a case scenario whereby a school of health professionals is in trouble, in deficits, and budget cut was necessary. So I said to my group, other groups can do budget cutting, but we are not going to do budget cutting. And I said, we're going to do budget optimization. Budget optimization is, rather than using the machete, you use the scalpel. To look at your budget, you can actually move some things around. As a program director, if you have budget line item budgets, you may discover that some lines you have so much, and in some lines you have so little. You might move things around. That is a very lax way of describing what operational research does. It's not minimum, but it's actually optimization. Somebody can say, all the things you are doing with whatever you are using in the back end, why can't I do it in Excel? Excel will give you minimum. Operational research will give you optimization, that this is the best. If we're talking about minimum, academic administrators, we want your program to cost $0. To them, that's the minimum. But they are okay with you having $1.5 million as your cost if they can make $6 million of gross income. But at the end of the day, they are not giving you minimum resources, but they are giving you optimal resources. I hope that answers your question.
So I also count Dr. John as one of my mentors. So it's a simple question. Your project, when will the app be available?
Thank you. We are hoping to publish these, either PTJ or JOPT. I understand that I need to turn this lecture into a script that will be published in JOPT. I'm hoping that we might be able to publish this study in the same month so that we can cross-link. So when we have that out, then the next project will be, if you remember the steps I gave, the number 5 step is implementing it in real life. All those data I used was dummy data. Maybe we might be able to partner with some institutions to use actual data, and we can give you your optimized results, and maybe we can validate it in real life, that it's not just in simulation in the computer, that it really works in real life. So that will be the next stage after we publish this optimization model.
Excellent. Thank you.
Hi, Emmanuel. Beautifully done. Notwithstanding the stresses of higher education, I think we suffer from several things. One is we're really nice. We also have this enormous belief in the value of hard work. And we give our creativity away. And that kind of leads me to think we're suffering from not PTSD, but learned helplessness. So I wonder if your thinking is that by giving us a more strategic approach, that we will also save ourselves from these long-standing beliefs of being nice and working in arenas where we think it's morally upward to do with less. And I have had people say, you know, Susie, we like doing with less. And all I could think of to say was, no, we don't. And no one does, because it compromises our patients and so on. Maybe you could comment on the emotional side of our work and our problem here, as well as the strategic.
Yeah, thank you so much, Susie. It's very emotional for me because by the time I was 7.5 years as a program director, by the end of my tenure, I was physically, emotionally, mentally drained. Because I used the previous 4.5 years like the chicken and the eagle that I was talking about. And at a point, I was holding on until COVID came and administrators were empowered to cut without mercy. It's taking an emotional toll. Let us be born again. I'm sorry for saying that. I'm a pastor, so. Many people don't know that while I was in Nigeria, I was a Bible school principal. And I studied the Bible since I was about 7 or thereabouts. So we need to get born again. If you understand that lingo, in our profession. We need to let go of the past and embrace the new. I mentioned to us that Stanley Parris came ahead of his time, and he showed us that even though we have a social mission of graduating physical therapists that are healthcare providers, it is still a business. We need to apply business sense. That's why I went to business school. And if you have heard my story before, the reason why I went to MBA school, I wanted to go to MBA school before then. But I went to interview at a place for a program director position, and I was dressed down by the incumbent program director outgoing who was interviewing me. And that person said, "Have you hired and fired before?" I said, "No." "Have you managed your budget before?" I said, "No." And he said, "I will not support your candidacy because I don't want you to learn on the job." And I said to myself, I will never allow anybody to put me in that position again, so I went to business school. So if you ask me that question, I will say, no, I don't have that experience, but I have the academic training. And see what that led to today. So to answer your question, the emotional toll is horrible. Diane and other Eli mentors, they are familiar with the emotional toil that program directors goes through. Actually, the Eli training became like a therapy group session for program directors. Because sometimes you think you are the only one in the whole world that is going through what you are going through, only to say, whoa, I'm better off. So it's time for us to change as a profession, and it's time for us to embrace the new technology. AI is here, chat GPT is here. It's a new world. And thank you, Susie.
Thanks for that shout out to the fellowship. You're absolutely right. I learned a lot from all of the fellows, and it is a hard world out there. But I'm wondering what you would say to what I've heard from in a large state university of we're all in this boat together. We have a social responsibility and a mission that's broader than just you. So that's why we spread the resources, and maybe we are trying to be too nice. But I remember being told I had a contract in front of me signed by a president saying you will have this many faculty for this new program, was exercise science. And a new provost and new president came, and they're like, nope.
Nope.
And I had already started the program with that promise, and now I'm left with 4 faculty instead of 7 or whatever it was. And them literally, this is what they said, you obviously don't know how to be a team player. Because I was fighting for that money and asking them, what does that signature mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know the argument of, well, we're all in the boat together, so if that goes down, you are too. How does your model help us with that?
Yes. How this model will help is the saying, don't kill the geese that lays the golden egg. Physical therapy programs, when the tuition price is set right, is a moneymaker any day, anytime. And your gross will always supersede your net. So you lay the golden goose. So if there's a program that makes $6 million gross revenue, and they are costing the institution $3 million, you can let them know we're already contributing $3 million to the pot. I'm all for commonwealth. It's a commonwealth because there are programs like physical therapy that are very, very lucrative and profitable. And there are some other programs. I'm looking at trying to start a genetic counseling program. and I've pushed that to 2030 because I'm going to break even, but I won't make a lot of money. So I want to start more profitable programs now so that I can use money from them to fund my genetic counseling. Genetic counseling is very important for the future of medicine. So I understand that commonwealth, but we just need to draw the line to say, where are the goose? And we are laying the golden egg. Don't kill us. Don't kill us. Poultry farmers know that if you don't feed the chicken well, you're not going to get eggs from them. And you're not going to get chicks from them. So we have to have that mentality. Yes, we are team players, but we have to set boundaries. Because you are killing us if you let us go below certain level of resources. So I agree with you. We should be team players, but then we need to set limits. But only accreditation can help us set that limit.
Thank you, Dr. John. I agree that this was really an extremely thought-provoking lecture. I wanted to talk or to ask you a bit about the operations research model that you had up there, and my ability to capture what you were saying, to look at the screen and to actually, at my age, see what was up there. And looking at those input variables, they largely seem to be variables that are institutionally based. And to some extent, well, institutionally based, even in terms of number of credits, number of hours. When you get down to the distribution of faculty by rank, that's going to then reflect how much teaching is expected at each of those ranks and so forth. So as best I could tell, those variables were institutionally based. Then at the other end, we crank out a number that says this is going to cost you $4.5 million. There were really, I don't think, any variables in there that would have been affected by accreditation. So if accreditation is the gating factor, I didn't see it there.
Okay.
But I do see the potential for putting that model together, and because there are some missing unmeasurable variables, like excellence, that you can crank out that bottom line and the institution can say, that's the bottom line for your program. And we're not spending a penny more than that because here's the research that said you can do what you need to do.
Okay.
So how do we avoid it biting us?
Yes, thank you, Pamela. Before we can use this operations research, I'm just showing us the potential to solve all the excuses that have been given why we shouldn't move forward. Before we can actually get here, as a profession, we need to sit down to determine what is the optimal resource that is necessary to operate excellently, or, let me use the word successfully, a DPT program, for instance. We need to have that first. It is based on that minimum that we can now begin to have guidelines for the type of institution and institutional characteristics. So the idea is this. If CAPTIV, for instance, can say, if you have a class size of 30, you need 12 FTEs. We are not concerned whether you are a teaching institution or you are a research institution. We are concerned about you graduating competent doctors of physical therapy, and your faculty should be able to have scholarship productivity once every 2 years. These are the resources that is needed. If they give that guideline, I want to go away from the word prescription to use the word guidelines. If CAPTIV publishes guidelines, that if you are this type of institution, this is the minimum that is required, then CAPTI can now say, another place in the standard to say, depending on the mission of your institution, you need to show us how you upscale from the minimum guidelines, baseline, unless you can prove to us that your institution is all about that baseline. That is how I think we might be able to have very successful, currently successful programs that are operating at a high level. They might be able to justify to their own administration. Another thing that we need to look at going forward, I show you the figures from medicine. Medicine made a decision that it's not just about education. It's about education, research, patient care. They said that education cannot stand alone without research and patient care. And that was the reason why they said that if you are going to start a medical school, you are not permitted to show in your financial plan that you are going to use more than 50% of your tuition for your operation. You have to show research, you have to show patient care, because it's a triad. And that is, maybe we have to rethink what our physical therapy education is all about. Is it just cranking out these clinicians? And that's the reason why one might be ambivalent about the discussions going on in our profession that CAPTI should do away with the 50% PhD requirement. I'm sorry, I'm biased. We might be going backward if we do away with that. We need to look at research, practice, and patient care. And that's the reason why many programs are having faculty practices, and that will have to be factored into the resources. So that's why I was talking about guidelines. We need to come up with guidelines. We have guidelines for stroke. We have guidelines for Parkinson's. We have guidelines for arthritis. They are all very different, but there needs to be an underpinning, an undergird, and we have to do that work first. And without encoding it into our accreditation standards, it might be very problematic.
I love the idea of a model that would, a mathematical model. I think that's phenomenal. But I would argue that we have one step first.
Okay.
And that is, we need to understand, we need to know what are the parameters of a successful program. Whether we're moving towards competency-based education, but we got ways to figure out whether the competencies we set equal success. But if we don't have that, then we're still pulling out of air what the other inputs should be.
That is exactly what I was going to say, but you put it better than me. That's exactly what I'm saying, that we have to do the work first before we can use all this model.
Emmanuel, you were exactly right. In the 80s, and I can't go back and tell you when, ASAP did workshops for physical therapists, and there was a book published, and I can remember in my old office where it was on the shelf, and it was Cost Accounting in Physical Therapy Education. And it was 8 faculty members for 40 students. That's the piece, that's where that urban legend now came from. And that's, I'm gonna say it was mid-80s. Okay. Unfortunately, when I retired, that book went into recycling.
Yeah, Emmanuel, thank you so much for really a wonderful lecture, and one that really, I think, stimulates a lot of the right kind of discussion. I think we ought to also look at it from a systems level. And I think when we talk about programs, as if they're, little, we could just have, we can have 100 programs or 200 programs or 400 programs or 800 programs, and they're all, we can use operations research to figure out how much each program should have in the way of resources. But I think we're ignoring, the system as a whole. And we have a system, and we have I mean, we have resources, and when we try to spread those resources into many different programs, it doesn't work. And that's a big part of the problem we have right now, is that we're trying to spread out all of those resources, and we just can't build programs that are going to be excellent or even adequate if we're just continuing to spread those resources more and more thin. So we have to your model has to look at the system as well, and the health of the system that we're trying to build. We're trying to build the excellence of our entire academic enterprise, not the independent PT program that we happen to be struggling to run. So I would urge you to kind of try to find a way to put that into your model as well.
Thank you, Jim. I want to say that operations research is capable of doing that. It's in my note, but I didn't mention it. Actually, operations research started during the World War I or World War II, that the military folks used it to calibrate the battlefield and other stuff. So what I'm trying to say is that even the system approach, we can use operations research. You can see that we pump in some dummy data. It's garbage in, garbage out. If we get the input data wrong, then you're going to get suboptimal results. So if you want to look at the system as a whole, operations research has the capability to do that. So I will agree with you. What I didn't have time to show is the part of my title, which says implication for criteria for excellence. What I would have loved to do is to link any of those outputs to some of the criteria that ACAPT was working on while I was still on the board. How we can do that, it will need a lot of work for us when we need think tanks within our profession, and we know we have very brilliant minds that can look at all the parameters, all the constraints, all the obstacles, and we can have the correct input. If we have the correct input, we will have wonderful decision variables that will be the output for us. So you are very right. We should aim towards excellence for the whole system rather than just individual. So whether we go individual, we go system-wide, operations research has the capability to do it. So thank you for that comment.
We have time for one more comment or question, if folks would like to approach the mic. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all so much for coming. We'd like to invite you to the Academy of Education's annual membership engagement and business meeting tonight, 6:30, over in the Omni in the Momentum Room. Thank you so much.